What's up? This is Xander Rose. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the content. One thing I realized from my analytics is that over 90% of y'all do not subscribe to the channel, and you're likely just seeing these videos either from search or from your homepage. To make sure that you can see all the content that I put out that you enjoy, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you know whenever I release a video in the future. But without further ado, let's get to the content. Okay, so what are we up to today? We're going to be going through my process for programming drums as well as some mixing as we go along. I'll show the process because in a lot of my track breakdowns, I kind of just show them. And it might be better to think, okay, what is actually the kind of creative process? What am I thinking about when I'm programming these drums, not just the final product? So I just made this very simple, what your guys' projects might look like, which is just a kick and clap with maybe a familiar melody. And then I have some samples over here and I'll go through how I picked them. So obviously that's the notorious melody by Mala on that bass line. Nice little pluck I designed. So over here we got some different samples. We got more claps. We have 2 snares. We got some hi-hats. So 2 closed hi-hats there and then 1 open hi-hat. One more traditional snare, 1 less traditional snare. Bunch of different claps. We got some weird perk. This one's kind of a clap as well. Might put that over there. And these, which are kind of like low perk that I just like the sound of. So I picked these just because I like them. I mean, for hi-hats, you definitely need at least 1 closed hi-hat and at least one open hi-hat. These 2 are noisy samples that I use all the time, so that's why I picked them. And then the rest of them were just, I thought they would sound nice. For the claps, you don't want anything too big. You want the main clap to be the loudest, biggest one. And then the perk is really just whatever you think sounds good. Now, I found this sample a bit ago when I was working on like some melodic house, and it's a great sample and it sounds really good leading into claps. So my first intention is just to put it there before that first clap. Maybe we'll put it here as well. And it kind of works to fill out that space. But before we do any of that, just some notes. This bass obviously has, let me just squish this guy down here. Obviously has some side chaining on it. That's the only kind of processing I did. What we're going to do now is select all of these that aren't assigned to mixer tracks and assign to mixer tracks. So now we've got everything there. And we see this guy. Now, this guy is really best when in the center, since that's where I'm keeping this clap. And here's the clap over here. And I'm actually just going to key everything down to about 6 and then bust them over here. So this will be my perk bus, and we're not going to do anything with it right now. We're just going to leave it there. Just keep routing everything towards it, and we'll do some changes to it later. Now we can right now go through the entire shindig here, so we'll do that one by one. Let me know if there's a faster way to do this. I would really appreciate that. But we will go through route only so that it's not also routing to the master. That's why we have to do that. Perk, perk, perk. And this will pay off at the end. You'll see why we're doing this. Route, route, route. Route. See if we got any more over there. No, that's the last one. Okay, good. So that's the first one. Next up, let's throw in some hi-hats maybe. So I'm hearing kind of a trill. Let's get our subdivision up a little bit more. It's even more faster than that, I think. That's what I'm hearing. Maybe something like that. Or it's actually, you know what? It's it's before this note that I'm hearing it come in. Like that, but not quite that fast. Maybe just on each hit. So no, I'm not really liking that, so I'm going to consider that a failure. Take this out, and it's important to recognize when ideas aren't working. So let's just look at some other things. Typically, there are certain areas where putting additive hats works, so maybe let's try doing that first. We want a smaller... Usually at this kind of one before there, that works out pretty well. And we'll repeat that on each of them. So this, before this third beat on each of them. And let's go into the mixer. So it's standing out really apparently, and we're just going to throw that to one side. So now it's a lot less apparent, and we'll try to get this hat back in to play off of it. Maybe, yeah, there it works. And then in the mixer, because it happens like right before it, we're going to throw it in the opposite direction, and this is where we're going to start building out the stereo spectrum to have more width. And because it kind of hit on these notes where the MIDI's hitting, it adds to it as well. It kind of accentuates the actual MIDI notes without taking away the attention from them. And you might think they sound kind of weak. That will again be fixed later. So let's look at what else we have here. I like the sound of that on kind of adds more of a pulse on those notes there. And I already kind of know what I want to do with this guy, is do just a classic roll at the end here. And for this, we're gonna dirty it up a bit because it's so quiet. Maybe not clipper, we want more like a distortion going on it. Maybe overdrive? It's a bit loud now, so I think what we'll do is make sure that it's EQ'd properly. Yeah, so take out all these lows. And it's kind of doing its thing. I want it to still be wide, but not actually on one side, so we're going to add some stereo widening to it. Crank this up. And I don't like how long it lasts. So if I could get... I don't think the transient one is going to work for this, but what we'll do instead... Oh, actually, we could just manually... There, so now it's getting cut off when this second clap happens, which is what I want. And we'll listen for this guy. classic G-house claps there. Now we could even have two different claps or snares, and what you would do there is have one pan hard left, hard right. So for instance, if we did that with these guys, we would go into here and just throw them like this. Let's turn them down a bit. Now they sound kind of thin alone, so let's reintroduce this guy. And then it kind of actually fills it up quite nicely, so I like that idea. Turn them down a little bit more, because we still want this to be the most predominant sound. And we've got plenty of other sounds to work with, so it's okay to use them there. We're going to save these hats for a second later. And go back here. And in general, we don't want things to go straight on the offbeat because they'll be covered by hats later. It's okay to have them there, but we kind of want to avoid that. And this guy will continue. And I was thinking this guy would do cool as kind of a teaser for that later quad hit. Because it's quite subtle, maybe not there. Let's make this, turn this guy so it clips by the hat again. Yeah, that sounds better, so let's do that. And then what we can do is throw him to the right. And I don't think we'll need this clap, and we will try to do that imitation thing with this guy instead. I think it will work out with this one. This is all trial and error. So there we have it. Quite a wide, varied drum loop. Let's listen to it without the bass. I think we can even get this guy to repeat over here because it does sound like this space is kind of empty. Which isn't like a totally bad thing. It's not bad to have some empty space. And basically what we would do from here is duplicate this over, have the small hi-hat come in on all the offbeats, just like this. Yeah, all the offbeats. This is the closed hi-hat, and then we'll do the same with the open hi-hat. Oh, that's not what I wanted. What's going on here? Yeah, so do. And then after, Now, one thing it's tending to do is already have the hi-hats slightly to the left. So this is something that we could do and then put the claps a little bit to the right. And I would also put in that kind of leading this guy as well, slightly to the right, so that it's at the same position in the stereo spectrum as that clap. Another thing I might do is, instead of just switching to this open hat, is to layer it so that you don't lose the sound of the original one, because it sounds kind of weird just going from one to the other. And then I'll take out these white noises, transfer this guy over. Now you might think this sounds pretty good. Let's listen to it all together. So it does sound okay, but there's kind of this issue with some of your perk will have reverb on it, and some will be a lot more compressed than others. So how do we glue everything together so that we're not overpowering the bass, but we still have presence from it? Well, easy thing. We can use any type of compressor. Glue compressor is very popular for this. I choose to use sausage fattener to add a little bit more character. It also that way processes the samples so that if they're from popular sample packs, they don't necessarily sound exactly the same as the originals. And I usually do that by cranking the color quite a lot to like 30, and then keeping the fatness either at 10 or 15% around there. And now we can actually have it at a much lower gain and still have a lot of the power. And then after that, what I would do is throw in a reverb, just the stock one, put it to drum room all the way wet. Sounds like that. So now I have the same reverb applying to all of them, which is what I want. Finally, throw out an EQ. Have it hard cut, so out the subs. And you can dial in the gain from there. So that's kind of the finished results. And then, you know, as you put in, it'll totally depend on what your bass line is, but I actually usually do the drums first and then build the bass line around it. Let's even see what it sounds like without this snare, because I'm not super convinced on it. Yeah, so I hope that gave you some insight on how I usually do my drum programming and my mixing for them. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Try to fill a lot of the stereo spectrum. A lot of times because, you know, your bass will be straight either in mono, or even if it's wide, it's not like it's panned. So there's a lot of room to play around and catch people's attention. I tend to do that in a lot of my remixes and my original tracks. And then it's really just a matter of making sure that all your drums kind of have a similar vibe, even if they're coming from different sample packs and whatnot, is to process them bust so that, you know, they really glue together and they sound like one unit. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like and comment down below. It helps me a lot so that this reaches more people. And as I said at the start of the video, it's like 95% of people who view these videos that are not subscribed. So if you aren't subscribed, I make lots of content like this, especially now during the COVID-19 stuff that's been going on. I've been putting out videos almost every day. So Do subscribe so you can get that, hit the bell icon, all that jazz. And as always, happy dancing.